Hey listeners, it's Alex, your host, EOA, Entrepreneurs of Asia, the show where we talk to founders, investors, and entrepreneurs, and talented individuals in the region who are having an impact in Asia and beyond. For today's episode, we get to sit down with my friend of 10 years, YK Goon. He's a unique guy who I respect. Lots of times, people shy away from anything outside the norm. YK is not one of these people. For me, I personally love surrounding myself with diverse thinkers, even if you end up disagreeing with them. YK is a software engineer by trade. For all intents and purposes, he is the CTO of Kakitangan, a SaaS platform for HR management, but he also has an old artistic soul. In this episode, we talk about the concept of flow, the engineering mindset versus the artistic mindset, developing software engineering talent, technical leadership in software engineering management, and I hope you're not bored of my network. We discuss some early Rocket Internet days in respect to scaling fast, however, from the unique angle of actually talking about the technical software engineering side of Rocket Internet. Towards the end, there are some more practical concepts such as product development with a sales team, in respect to SaaS, road mapping for products, and advice for other CTOs. As usual, feel free to skip around for different chapters if your podcast platform allows it. Let's dive right in. All right, YK Goon, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thanks for having me.
All right. So we have here with us today YK Goon. I guess you are CTO, right?
I am a senior developer. I'm not sure what title we have where I work.
Okay, but you're the one leading the project.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're a technical lead, or the one who makes all the technical decisions for your current company, right? And I guess engineer lead by day and then crypto trader by night?
I suppose, yeah.
Or, I mean, not exactly like that, but half-half, I guess.
Yeah, close enough.
Right? I mean, LinkedIn says you're a software developer. Are you just being humble, or?
It's true. I make software for a living.
Yeah.
I try to do that in my free time, too. So, among many things. Yeah.
So why avoid the title and all these things?
Well, we work in a startup, so we do many things, so titles are not all that reflective, really, of what we do. So, it's convenient to pick something reflective, in general.
And I guess it depends on the size of your company. And I mean, are you saying the title's not important? And at what stage will they become important then?
At what stage will it become important? I don't know. I guess when people try to judge you, at a point when people try to hire you, I suppose. Maybe up to, I've heard that it becomes important when a company becomes like middle-sized and maybe it becomes politically significant. People try to read into what you really are from the title. Yeah.
And so your current company for where you hold this supposed title is Kakitangan, I guess, and that means, what does that mean actually in English?
In English, it means staff.
Staff, or HR, right?
Yes. In Malay, it literally means hands and feet.
Hands and feet. Oh, kaki, feet, and tangan is hands.
Correct.
Okay. So, and this is a SaaS company?
Yes.
That does, how would you describe it?
It is a SaaS solving human resource problems targeted at small, medium enterprises. So that for them to handle their HR services, their payroll? Yeah, specifically payroll, claims, leaves, time attendance. That's it.
So I want to start off with this quote. A man blessed with curiosity, attempting to learn the art of being in search of antifragility. What does this mean?
Antifragility, I think, if you read Taleb, you probably know. It's the idea of getting stronger while I don't want to butcher this. So it's the idea of beyond robustness.
Right. So this is from the author Nassim Taleb.
Correct.
Which book?
Antifragile.
Antifragile.
Yeah. Which is a trilogy. If you're not exposed to it, he has 3 books, and this is the last of that, which you should begin first and then read that in reverse order.
So why do you define yourself like this? You're attempting to learn the art of being, I guess, being alive, in search of being stronger through this idea.
Yeah, I value strength and I value curiosity. I think that's what should drive us, and strength is just strength.
Why focus on this idea of strength then? Has life been challenging and tough, or?
It has, absolutely.
And in what aspects?
In In what aspects? Financially, socially, relationships? Yeah, pretty much cover everything. Isn't it?
I guess that maybe in terms of personal journey and growth, right? But did you have a very tough childhood or anything? Or
I would say a lot of people had it worse than me, but I didn't find it overall a very pleasant childhood. So I would say yes, it was tough.
It was tough. Okay, so then it's probably why a lot of these traits are quite important for you today.
It is.
Right. Yeah. Okay, I pulled this from your website, YK Goon. Right, so I was doing research and surprisingly very active still. You know, a lot of people have personal websites, and I think you're writing very consistently up to this month even.
It was a recent thing, you know.
It was a recent thing. Okay.
I had this weekly thing about like what I'm interested in this week. That's a fairly recent thing.
Okay.
So I surprisingly was able to keep it up.
Yeah, and it's a combination of your writings and also a lot of your other activities too that it leads to, right?
Yeah.
So we could follow you at YK Goon on the Twitter.
Yes.
YKGoon.com, which is your website, personal website, and then
correct.
You also have a YouTube, right? So youtube.com/c/YK Goon.
Yeah, YouTube. I'm not even sure anymore. I'm not active there. I used to post. The reason that existed was because I made a short film. I don't know, about 10 years ago. Yeah, that's when I put that in. Yeah.
Then you have also a lot of coding videos and what we'll talk about later, some Wing Chun, right?
Yes.
Yeah, which is Chinese martial arts, right?
Correct.
So I've known you for about probably 9 years.
Oh.
Right?
Yep.
Right, and then I think I think out of the 9 years we barely probably stayed in touch. We kind of went on this journey, started on this journey, and then we kind of diverged, and then I came back to Malaysia and eventually reached out to you and got in touch with you. Right?
I wish we spend more time.
Yeah, definitely. Every time we've met, it was definitely a great conversation and always engaging. I always appreciated the company.
I agree.
Do you remember how we met?
I think you somehow hired me for Zalora.
Well, I mean, it wasn't me, right? So I think so. What happened was Oliver Samwer was coming to, founder of Rocket, one of the brothers, right, of Rocket Internet, was coming to Malaysia for the first time, and it was this insane scramble because he wanted to interview like 100 people, and he was coming like in 1 or 2 days. So I think he wanted to hire anywhere from developers to co-founders to just anyone like senior staff, and then I think I must have found. I think I Googled around looking for engineers, and I think I came across your blog, I'm guessing.
Okay.
And I probably must have reached out to you by calling you or email or something.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Probably LinkedIn.
Probably LinkedIn? Possibly, yeah. Because that probably was LinkedIn, maybe. And then and I reached out to you. And then I think you came in. And then you had an interview with Jakob Bro, right?
Yes.
How was that?
It was pleasant. I mean, 2 months later, that led me to Australia, where I met him there again. So, yeah, he's a fine bro.
Good pun. So that was 9 years in the making, and so I want to start off with more personal questions to get to understand you better, know you more, right?
Yeah.
So in what ways were you a hacker as a kid growing up?
Hacker as a kid growing up?
Yeah.
Not much though.
Not much.
Computer was not a thing.
Okay, so computer was completely out of your life.
I just tied myself there. So no, it wasn't a thing, but I was quite interested in tinkering. So, but I lacked the channel of doing so. So what was available to me was paintings.
Paintings, okay.
I really tried my hands at drawing. Failed miserably. I was horrible at it.
Yeah.
What are the avenues? Music? Nothing. I had nothing there. I'm not cut out for music. So maybe writing. Writing was something, as in fiction.
Writing fiction
was something I was into, though. Yeah, I didn't cultivate much beyond, I guess, school.
So then, I want you to qualify. Like, how did you know you were not good at painting and not good at all these artistic endeavors?
I think you give it enough time, you just know. You see how other people do. I have friends who draw. This childhood friend, Daniel. Okay, if you're listening, you know what I mean. He would doodle casually in his idle time. It would just come out beautiful. So okay, if that's the pinnacle, how far I am to that? So, even if I give my 100% effort, I wouldn't come even close. So that's how I know.
But I think there's two very important concepts there, right? I think one we've talked about in the past when we've met up is this idea of flow, right? So I guess what you're saying is there was no natural flow. You couldn't get into it where it was this natural state and great things came of it, right?
Yeah, and also I think the brain could be wired for certain medium. So say when I'm coding, you think in a certain way, and maybe I suspect I'm wired for that, for that kind of problem solving, very deterministic, almost game-like.
So describe the feelings of how you would know, and how did you arrive to knowing that then?
To knowing
that you were wired for it, and this is you have flow, and and this is what you should be doing.
As in you kind of know when you achieve flow, right? So I wouldn't imagine I would achieve flow playing music up till, of course, you reach a certain skill.
Yeah.
Then you would feel that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, I can cite at this point there are 3 activities I can find that maybe 4: writing fiction, coding, badminton, martial art. Yeah. So yeah, maybe it largely is a function of skill. Maybe when your skill level is too low, it's just impossible getting flow.
Yeah. But then, so it's a little bit dangerous then, right? How do you know you didn't give yourself enough time to get to a level of where you are over that threshold to discover if you have flow or not? And how do you know you didn't give up too early? And or is the world black and white where people are just fixed wired for certain things? Or is this maybe people believe there's more this fluid idea where if you put enough effort you can become a master of something?
I would pay attention to beginner's luck. If you dabble in something new and you feel that beginner's luck, you probably have some talent there. Yeah. So it's worth pursuing further.
And how would you go about exploring that then?
Dabble. Give it some time.
Dabble things you're interested in, or what's a better method?
These days, I would go towards the area where I'm curious about. So if I'm not curious about, what am I not curious about? Let's go back to drawing. I'm not curious there at all. And in fact, if I were to look at drawing tutorials on YouTube, which I recently did for some reason, I did not feel compelled to follow through. Yeah. So, but if I were to pick a sport, badminton, I'll be fairly curious on how to optimize a smash, for instance. Yeah.
Okay, so then you'll dig in, you'll keep pulling on the thread, watch more videos, then you go practice it, and then it's just all very natural. There's no frustration or pain.
Correct.
I mean, even if there is, it's something you in the end would enjoy. Yeah. So then, can you define exactly what it does it mean to be a hacker then?
Be a hacker?
Yeah. Because you said tinkerer, right? Where's the line drawn between tinker versus then becoming hacker?
I guess I use hacker in the sense of making things. So the other word would be maker.
Maker.
Yeah.
Getting things, like making things to do it in such a way that they're probably people wouldn't think they could do it, or to do things that they were not meant to do. Or you're just saying being very good at building in general, hacking things together.
Yeah, putting things together in a way that is hopefully original and hopefully anti-fragile. At least in my professional work, I would hope that the things I build are anti-fragile. In the sense that the more it breaks, the stronger it gets.
And in that sense, then, so growing up, you wouldn't consider yourself a hacker. Then how about now?
Yeah, I think I am now. Yeah. I spend most of my daytime making things, fixing things, software specifically. In my free time, I write. I try to write fiction. Yeah, that's pretty much it.
How would you personally define yourself?
I define myself. I would hope a thinker or artist of life. Very far from it, but that's what I aspire to. Maker. Yeah.
Do you find that in conflict? Right, you have this artistic pull. I guess writing, you could express yourself artistically. You find flow there.
Yeah.
Even I guess to a degree, some element of martial arts.
Yeah.
Right. There could be some artistic element to that, but at the same time, being a very logical programmer, how do you express yourself there? Is it possible to do that artistically in terms of structured, logical engineering, ones and zeros, right and wrong, this kind of world?
You're absolutely right. It's almost polar opposite.
Yeah.
Instinct, right?
Yeah.
On one side is very deterministic, it's very logical. You know what you achieve.
Yeah.
The success state is very clear.
Yeah. Well, what's possible. There are things that can be done and things that can't be. Very, very similar to operations.
Yeah. Whereas with art, you don't really know. Yeah. So I guess maybe that's what it means to be a Renaissance man.
Yeah. Does engineering and coding get to a certain point in time or state or problems where you're at that limit, where they're just things you don't know, and it becomes more philosophical in art?
I guess with in my professional life, we call ourselves software engineer.
Yeah.
Which the engineering bit is rather misleading.
Okay. Yeah. What do you mean?
So engineering suggests that the things we do, the process we go through, if we do this and exactly this, we get that result.
Traditional engineering, I guess, right? The laws of physics are very fixed for mechanical engineering and physics, chemistry, everything.
You get total control of the input, you get total control of the scope, and you get exactly the same input. Mm-hmm. With software, that's never the case.
So why do people compare it to engineering, and what are the difference and where are the similarities then?
It's legacy, I guess. It's the best word they can come up with. So personally, my alternative to that is gardening. So gardening is a better analogy to describe what we do, because software is never done. So the heuristic is a software is done when the last user is dead.
Yeah, no one's using it anymore.
Yeah. So therefore, unlike a bridge, your software always change. And therefore, the right comparison isn't quite a building or a bridge. It's a tree. Mm-hmm. So how do you approach a tree as a gardener? Mm-hmm. So you never quite know how it will turn out. Yeah. But if you take certain steps the right way, it'll probably come up the way you want. Yeah.
Okay. So like if you care for it the right way, you know the characteristics of how it should grow, the right soil, right temperature.
Yeah. Exactly. Sounds quite similar to, I don't know, bringing up a kid, I guess.
Oh, really? Well, I mean, I don't have kids.
I don't either, but you cannot control for what he turned out to be.
That's true.
You can kind of give it a nudge here and there.
Yeah.
So there are things you can do that kind of bring up the interest or talent. Yeah. But you can never quite control where it goes and how it turns out.
Yeah. How many engineers out there are listening to this now and cringing and saying you're wrong? And in what ways would they have some valid points, I guess?
I'm not sure. This idea hasn't got enough traction to get enough negative feedback. I think most would agree, but they may say, what can we do about this? What value can I extract out of this? Yeah.
Man, I almost get the feeling that a lot of people in engineering or coding or programming, they feel they are the master of the world, and that's why they also enjoy it. It's part of their ego to have something in their life they can control, because it's pretty much putting ones and zeros together, right?
I agree. It's and that can be quite profound on a personal level, right?
For fulfillment, I guess.
Yeah.
But what you're alluding to is that the truth is a little bit further from it. It's a little bit more nuanced, right? It's not exactly that.
Yeah. I guess about if you're talking about control, that's quite true. In sense that you think you have total control.
Yeah.
Over your creation. Mm-hmm. It's not true. It's a culmination of so many factors.
That's true.
What your customer demands of it.
And human interactions, and humans are definitely not predictable sometimes, right?
Yeah. And you can take the same idea to religion. You think, your God has total control over this realm? Maybe not true. You know?
Yeah, you would hope so at least. Right.
So which brings in, if everyone questions why would God let this happen, maybe he's not omnipotent.
Well, we'll leave that discussion maybe for the religious guys. So tell me then, throughout all these different changes and then exploring different things, where did you start to build your programming chops, your coding chops? Where did this come from then?
Let's see. My first coding experience was funny. It was my first computer. I coded in BASIC.
In BASIC?
QBasic specifically. Yeah. It was Windows 95, so it came with it. What was it? I tried to make a game. So what the first thing you find in the game? A splash screen. I tried to code a splash screen and have the text scroll from top to bottom. That's it.
Yeah.
So that was code. That was my first experience at coding. So, all right. And many years later, I went to university, and the major was about game design.
Oh, you went to Multimedia University.
Yes.
Right, so this was also another guest on episode 4, Andrew G. He also went to Multimedia University.
Right. Yeah. Right. What did he do?
He did financial engineering. Right. And then I think he then somehow did some consulting work and jumped to Lazada, BCG, then Lazada.
That's great. That's great. So my experience there was formative software-wise because it was the most hardcore among the whole school of computer science. We spent a lot of time making games, different genres, different aspects of game making. So much time spent coding in different platforms. So that gave me a lot of hours.
So that's how you developed, basically. So you were forced to. It must have been very different back then. There was like a lot less tools, a lot more probably rudimentary coding. You had to build a lot of things from scratch.
Yeah.
I guess from what I'm hearing, Multimedia had a pretty good program, and it was very rigorous, where you had to just solve hard problems all the time in the context of building games.
Yeah, it was, and it was a very special program because most people didn't do that. There was a handful of us doing that. So it's just sheer hard work.
Sheer hard work. Yeah. And then you had, I guess, in the journey, you discovered you had flow for it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So you really enjoyed. I mean, honestly, coding in BASIC or something like very low level languages sounds very painful for most people, but I guess you enjoyed it.
Oh well, to be fair, BASIC was okay. It was just fine. It's just not, an industrial tool. But yeah, at the time, yes, the tool wasn't as mature as it is now. Yeah. So we have to deal with a lot of. We coded a lot in C. We learned graphical programming. So it was hardcore that way. I don't know how is it done now. Right now, maybe there may be script kiddies. I don't know. But yeah, it was very. It gave us experience that most people do not have. I still think making games is the most hardcore thing one can do in digital art, in software.
In software currently. I mean, and to be fair, if you think about what's driving all the hardware space, if you think about why we have all this crazy new technology, more powerful computing, at the forefront is gaming. It is.
Right? The time spent also taught me what I wasn't, about things I'm not talented in. And that was game design.
What is that? What is the difference?
So what I'm okay in is making the game itself if the rules are in place. Who came up with the rules? Someone else did.
See. Okay, so someone needs to make the rules of how it works.
Yeah. So but to be fair, that was a tricky thing. There's no Bible for that. Yeah.
It must be tied to your experiences, partly how you're wired, your exposure to different things, how open your mind is, how creative you can be as well, right?
Yeah. So it was at the time we also struggled with that as a collective.
Yeah.
We didn't know. We're trying to approach game design as an art. Didn't quite know how to go about it. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe the field is way more mature now.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
A lot more accessible, a lot more tools, I would believe.
I guess a parallel today would be tokenomics.
What is that?
Tokenomics in crypto, as in
Crypto, okay.
yeah, how you design incentive.
So they call it tokenomics, like economics but tokens.
Yes.
Okay, so basically how the use cases for tokens in the crypto space.
Yeah, in that how they influence behavior by emitting this much token that has this much yield. They predict you would do something in this fashion.
Yeah.
But maybe not.
Yeah. But at the same time, you also talked about, before we would always discuss about crypto, then you told me about all these crypto games, which then also you have game design within the context of crypto too.
Yeah.
Right, so I guess that's something very similar where you have even more complexity with the blockchain, and how that actually plays out with the games, and then what value the end user gets in terms of probably tokens too, or cards or whatever it is. Right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it sounds like gaming is I guess that most people who get into programming when they're young, they probably play games and they think they want to do that, but I think people finally find out very fast that it's very hard and they move away, I guess.
Yeah. It's also a it's not a lifestyle I would recommend.
It's very painful.
It is, and money. It's hard to say.
Yeah, unless you get lucky in something like a Flappy Bird or something.
Yeah,
which is probably quite rare.
Yeah, I mean, what a fluke that thing is!
So we're building on your experiences. That I think university was probably the defining moment, right, to kind of set you up for where you are now.
Yeah.
Did you further extend yourself to the community, or get involved with open source, or was it just only focused on school and games?
Yeah. I did not immerse myself into communities. To be fair, I should.
You should have. Yeah.
And I'll be happy to do that going forward more. Yeah. At the time, not as much.
So then, like, especially since you didn't reach out and see other people and be a part of the community, especially, which is very critical for development as a coder and engineer. Were there any pivotal moments in your early experiences before Zalora then that helped you develop further, or like, because what I really want to get at too is like, how did you know what you were solving was right, and how did you know where you were wrong? Right?
So it's like this. There was a period of time where before Zalora, I was a startup entrepreneur. So there were different businesses that I went through. There was a period that I did not code at all. I dabbled in sales. I dabbled in marketing. Everything else that involves business running. Yeah.
So you did everything.
Yeah. So that's where I get the experience. I mean, I know business speak from there.
Okay. Because you were actually a founder, basically.
Yeah. And that's where my community outreach is. I guess it's not so much with the coders, but with the suits. Yeah. So from trying to do startups, I pretty much know as a coder what the business should optimize for.
Okay, and so that's very important, actually. Then.
Yeah, and I figured that's not what a lot of coders have.
Yeah, they are usually in one world, but I guess there's more power when you step into two worlds. And you could also probably speak the same language in both worlds and connect it. Right? A lot of value to be created there.
Yeah. So that's probably what drew me to Zalora too. Yeah, at the time I saw it as a startup. I don't know if they saw themselves as a startup.
Yeah, I guess you were randomly called by me, who had just joined. Probably after a few days only. I had no clue what was going on.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, these people just want to pay me money to build crazy things. I was like, I'll do it for a year. Right? And then I was like, oh, so now I have to find people. I when I had my interview, I had no clue what a co-founder was. Right? I mean, at least you were a founder at the time. I was just so green. I had done my own business, but it was in the world of finance and investment. Right? So it's a whole different learning curve. So
you were in finance before that?
Investments, I guess you could say, trading and investments. Yeah.
In what capacity?
I raised money for my own private investment company, and I was just deploying the capital into markets. Traded energy, currencies, futures and currencies, basically, in the global macro space. Yeah, and then I think, by having my own company and doing that, raising money, that's what also attracted Rocket to my profile. I was randomly connected to it. So
I see. I see.
And I guess for you, I must have saw you were a coder. They were looking for hire engineers, and I must have seen you had probably some business experience. It's 9 years, a long time to remember, but
Yep.
And I guess that's why I called you in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but like you said, those early experiences being a founder were critical to your development, essentially.
It was. Again, I'm mostly not interested in being a code monkey. So
Yeah, which I think a lot of, would you say in Asia that like at least in the past 9 years that was probably more common? Obviously now probably less so, though, right? Or do you think it's so prevalent? Like people expect like a programmer, engineer, or coder to be a code monkey, which is like just do what I say and build.
yeah. I don't know the ratio, but I would guess a lot of people are that.
Still like that.
Yeah.
Even still today.
I believe so. Although I can speak of the people who don't work with me, but
Yeah.
of those that work with me, I try to, especially if they're young, I try to tell them, hey, this is what matters.
Yeah.
These are the metrics. Why do they matter? Because, well, they make your paycheck.
Yeah.
So these are the funnels that ultimately will be affected by your work. So ultimately what they do matters in this way. Yeah, that's what I'm telling.
Yeah. So then what is the most typical mindset of a young person coming in then? What are they like? Are they in the mindset of just tell me what to do and I do it, and what you're doing is to develop their thinking? So they really kind of view themselves as a code monkey, or?
I think largely they are. Yeah.
Okay.
Largely they are.
Most people coming in.
They come in think, I want to do the best job. Yeah. Well, it's great attitude.
Yeah,
you know, I want to do a good job. But what does that mean?
Yeah.
That maybe to them that means do what is given to me very well.
I mean, and to be fair, there is some wisdom in that, because when you're too junior, if you're trying to take too much scope in and then you don't have the experience,
Yeah.
you're going to go all over the place, probably make a mess.
True.
Right? And maybe prematurely optimize or do a lot of things that just they haven't had time to see or solve it. So someone does the thinking for them, puts them in their corner to do very well, and then they excel, right?
Yeah.
Is that the right way to think about it? Or is it possible to throw young people in the deep end just to code things and make a mess and allow them to grow?
What you say was true. So it's fair that they think that way.
Yeah.
It's the question is, do they think like that throughout?
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I see.
So while they're settling in, I would try to widen the scope of their thinking beyond the ticket they're given,
Yeah.
beyond the task they're given, and think more holistically. So that they think, oh no, there's a direct relationship between what they do and why they get paid. You know.
Yeah.
So that, you know, there's non-zero chance your business will fall tomorrow,
Yeah.
and it's probably for a handful of reasons.
Yeah. Being anti-fragile.
Yes.
Well, the method of leadership, mentorship, cultivating them as programmers and developing their thinking, this is in hopes of building anti-fragility, I guess.
Yeah, I hope so. Obviously, it's not a straight line, but
Yeah.
yeah. So they start off by just doing a good job. Hopefully, over time they understand, okay, what I do contribute towards this metric, and this metric contributes to that master metric,
Yeah.
and that's what matters.
And I mean, to be fair though, like you're saying this now, but this is after. I mean, you've been working a long time, like 15 years, 20 years.
20
years, right? You didn't have this philosophy from day one. Did you used to lead teams differently and cultivate them differently, or what were some of your bigger failings early on that you had to realize you had to change to switch to this kind of method, or was it always this kind of method you followed?
The bigger failings were more interesting. It's good that you bring it up. Let's see. Where should I begin? When I was given a team to lead, I pretty much had that idea down.
Okay,
I pretty much know what I was doing.
Okay.
But
When was this?
there were time, maybe a bit pre-Zalora time, slightly before that.
Okay.
Yeah. Though, there were time, so the time before that, I didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
So it's about, at that time, it's a straightforward sense of, okay, you got time. Let me give you something to do. to fill your time. You know? So, okay, let's hope that when everything is done, the business will fall into place.
So that was the first attempt at doing this.
Yeah, I guess.
Was that right or wrong?
There's no sense of priority.
Yeah.
So,
Just doing things as they come up
yeah.
and then hope things kind of work out. Which probably, if that's the method, most likely would probably fail then.
And of course, those were times before the idea of, you know, lean and product market fit come around.
Yeah. Agile, Scrum.
Yeah. So we didn't have that concept. So so how do you judge yourself? Sales, which is a horrible metric, really.
For, I guess, from an engineering standpoint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad we've developed good heuristics along the way.
Well, then you didn't know what you were doing, and then you kind of jumped to the job where you're now leading, and you say you're confident. Where does that come from? Like, how do you know you're doing it right then?
Right now, our approach is
Right when you got your first team, you said you were pretty confident that you, at least when you had juniors, you know how to develop their thinking and how to connect the smaller picture to the bigger picture, so they understand what they're doing and why.
How do I know that was the right approach?
How did you know that was how do you get such wisdom from before you didn't know anything?
Because I want the same thing. So if I'm satisfied, they'll be satisfied. You know, I'm not.
But not everyone's the same, though.
True, but you gotta find a better motivation, isn't it? So if I try to motivate myself by doing more meaningful things, maybe it'll work for others.
Okay, so at least it was more like, you know, this is how I would appreciate it, and hopefully if I try it out, then people would also appreciate it.
Yeah. So there are two approaches: either that you feel your work is impactful, or the work is interesting. It's one or the other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can it be both? Can be both.
Hopefully it's both,
Hopefully
but
it's
it's
both. You want it for
rarely
both, right? But sometimes it's one or the other.
Don't be that greedy, but
It ties to the idea of ikigai, right?
yeah.
You're trying to find that balance. It's like a compass, right? You're trying to find that balance. Sometimes you don't have one,
Yeah.
and then the next experience, you try to shift it more towards getting balance of all four quadrants, right?
Of course, given the choice, I want to do interesting things most of the time, but the suits are not happy.
The business people.
So
You were a founder once, so you understand why, right?
exactly, right? Yeah. So
In what cases is it just doing interesting things for the sake of doing interesting things, or were they going to actually add tangible business value?
interesting things there's never a direct correlation, right? They're always intangible, the innovative stuff you do, in quote. So you can never quite justify it, but I would say, you know, occasionally you do it for your own sake. Sometimes it's worth it.
How do you quantify worth it?
You can't.
But you would feel it, right?
You feel it, yeah.
But then how do you know, like, you didn't hurt the business or the people around you overall because of your selfishness?
I guess don't take too much time. Be mindful of what the resource you consume of the company.
Which are costing, essentially. Time, humans,
Yeah.
money.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a difficult balance. Maybe, you know, talk to your teammate. Maybe your teammate has insights about it. So it's a difficult balance.
Yeah. Can you maybe tie to a hard example? Right? So you wanted to do something interesting. I'm guessing solving a technical problem within the company or venture you're building. And then the suits or the business side, the other co-founders or the CEO said no.
Now, to be fair, where I work, that has never happened, and I appreciate that because the founder he has a slight technical background, and he gives a lot of freedom.
Okay.
And he trusts us to strike that balance.
So he also speaks the same language.
Yes.
Which is then very good for culture all around.
Yeah. So he would bring in business priority and leave it to us to decide. Yeah. So knowing that, so sometimes I'll think, this was a thing that was poorly done. I could have done it this way. Could I justify it for the business? Hard to say. I cannot quantify it. You can never.
Yeah.
So
What is one thing you've done?
see,
One hard example that you tried something out and you weren't sure the impact and the value you created at the end of finishing it.
I worked on one thing called a workflow engine.
The workflow engine. Okay, what is that?
It was a way for the user to code their own business logic rather than me doing it for them.
Okay.
So that
Code or like use simple syntax or no code? Or?
in a way they determine the logic. They may not code it. They don't know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But they determine the logic rather than we doing it for them. So the end effect is every customer get a distinct set of logic customized to them.
Well, I feel this is a very specific problem to SaaS that's very important to address, right? Like I was talking to my last episode I released was about an F&B entrepreneur who uses he calls it a CRM, which it is. It's a CRM software for managing the back end of the restaurant. And his biggest complaint was, as a SaaS program, I have very specific customizable events, but it can't be customized. I guess what you're saying is that you wanted to work on a piece of technology that would allow the SaaS program to scale while people could develop their own customized logic for their own needs.
Close enough. Right? He was trying to rearrange the table, isn't it?
Probably, yeah. Like, I mean, also it's CRM, so it's also tied to like it being more flexible for the table range, but also like if this person pops up on this table, then he could probably know their history of that, right? But I think the system wasn't flexible because they're trying to scale the same SaaS product of reservations across the board, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, it was about that. So the requirements, the scope was clear, what we need to achieve. So I had several, after cheap way of going and after expensive way of going. I ended up going with the expensive way.
Okay.
So because it was more beautiful and more future proof, and I think it paid off. Yeah.
So you said you couldn't quantify it, but it sounds like you should be able to quantify it.
I can if I stretch the imagination.
Yeah.
And they'll probably believe me.
But what you're saying, like you know deep down inside of you, like it was more like
yeah.
Well, I mean, would it be fair to say it's an intuition call?
It is.
Okay. So despite being a person who's very structured and logical, you're making calls without really understanding and feeling that this might have impact, and then I would really imagine though you would just need to look at how many people are using your end product, how many people are customizing, and what's the amount of usage, and I feel it could be measured easily.
How about this? I pick a poker analogy.
Okay.
Some people have a when they approach poker, they're very discreet in their probabilities. I'm not like that. I kind of feel my way.
Yeah.
I kind of feel it like 1/3 the chance. You know?
How much of the element of poker? Because I mean, you have card readers, so they'll know the probabilities of each move.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So.
Are you saying you're using intuition to make that same calls?
I do.
Okay.
All right.
And you bring that to your coding even.
Yes.
Interesting.
Now, can I make it discrete? Can I like put a number on it? I can. But I don't trust people who do it. Because they know it themselves. They're probably talking out of their ass. Yeah. A spreadsheet, I know there are scenario planning. There's the optimistic side, there's pessimistic side. Yeah,
well,
but come on.
They're trying to model massive complexity, right?
Yeah.
And usually the simplest models probably work out the best.
Yeah. I get that it helps with communication. People who don't know what you're feeling see that spreadsheet. They get that sense. Yes.
Well, it makes you feel better, even though it just could be. I mean, depending, like, some scenarios is going to work out, right? Probably the odds are it might work out, but then other times your model might just blow up, right?
Yeah. Now, so since I was deciding, and I was the one executing, I also get the advantage of switching course midway.
Oh, you mean, so if you're going in one direction strategically, roadmap, engineering-wise, then you could change.
If it didn't work out, then I get to switch track. So that would invalidate any, hard model I'll come up with.
But also, isn't that very risky and a little bit cavalier in respect to your users and the business side? Like, how much do you know that you're just not being selfish about this?
Oh, if I were to, I guess, what kind of alternative I'm given, right? If the other choice is for me to put everything down in numbers, give it a very hard model, I wouldn't pick that because it would consume energies that should have went to development.
And probably over-optimizing, prematurely optimizing.
Yeah, so I would rather have that energy spent building things. There's a real good chance that if I build things, it may come up better than what we expected, which happened numerous times. Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So instead of, because this also ties down to speed too.
Yeah.
Right. I guess if you're trying to game out everything and I guess 100% of the time using data, I would imagine, then what you're saying is you're going to slow down probably and probably instead of just maybe making small experiments and trying to hack it fast, then you find out much quicker if it's wrong or right. Then you could pivot if it's wrong, and if it's right, you're like, oh, this is actually much better.
Exactly.
So you're creating opportunities where you can go backwards. It's not like a fixed door. You're not shifting the tech stack or what you're using that, like, if you did this, then, you're sunk and you can't go back.
You touch on an important point.
Yeah.
So, whatever decision, this is true for my team as well. I try to advocate, whatever decision we make, unless try to make a decision that we can reverse, that we can undo.
Yeah.
Then it almost doesn't matter that we make the wrong one. We can undo it.
Is that in the sense of prioritizing speed, or why are you saying this?
If we cannot undo, then it makes sense to try to model it because it's a big gamble.
Yeah.
So it's like in the investment world that would be equivalent to, I'm making $1 billion bet. There's no going back.
Yeah.
In this case, I am making, $500,000 here and there.
How much of that would be hubris thinking you could actually game it out then? Is it possible? Or only a few people can actually do this? Let's say you do make $1 billion bet where you can't go back. Are we as humans just thinking that we're much smarter than we are, and it's just really, or are you saying that you could actually game it out to really change the outcomes?
Expand on the question.
So I feel like it's more philosophical, I guess, right? Like people think they're in control, like we talked about, with computers. But your analogy is more like gardening and trees, right? And the same. Now we're talking about investments and trading, which is very similar to also making a bet on building a startup, and maybe certain decisions in those processes along the way. Right? To what degree is hubris there? Like if we're making a decision that we can't go back from, how much do we really think we can game it out to be very sure of ourselves?
Yeah. So, I guess definitely there's hubris if it's $1 billion bet. So engineering realm, I can name some examples. Say from the beginning, you have to pick your tech stack. For us, it's Django, Python. Yeah. So, okay, how do we know it's the right one? But to be fair, it's an easy decision. We have a few choices. You just look at the ecosystem. Yeah. It's very strong. So it's likely gonna stick around 10 years.
Yeah.
Going forward.
Yeah.
So it's not a hard decision. We could have done JavaScript. That's fine too. So
yeah. I mean, it also depends on. I mean, like I think for tech stack questions, they're a little bit more discrete and more finite, right? I feel like there are certain variables most tech people will optimize to. Community. Are you good at it? Yeah. Can you pick it up fast?
Yeah.
Can you hire easily for it? Right. So those are a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But I mean, I wouldn't say that's a $1 billion no go back.
Exactly. So it was an irreversible decision, but it wasn't $1 billion.
Yeah. Correct.
So
it could be costly, but it's not terrible.
So since it's not it's not reversible, so you better do it right from the get go.
Okay.
Yeah. So if someone were to do I don't know, Rust, I'm gonna build it with Rust from day zero. Okay, then you better make sure someone out there that you can hire knows Rust.
Yeah. So I mean, I guess, yeah. So I guess also depends on the scale and size of it. A lot of what you're saying is there are some irreversible decisions that are not as big, but could be probabilistically gamed out, and I guess you would know that you have a chance of being right at least.
There's an investment analog to this, which is scaling in or scaling up. So you could make your $1 billion bet like right away at this price point.
Yeah.
Or I could like put in a bit here and there over time. So if I'm wrong, I can stop.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I've practiced this for some time. It worked out quite well.
So you're able to compound with small bets basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's put the crypto and trading talk on hold. So I want to go back before we go back to that section on your trading experience. What happened after I left Zalora Malaysia? Right? So we launched it, and then you went to Australia. You were saying, what was the rest of your journey there?
Oh, it's not like I went there for for a long time. It was trying to do knowledge transfers from the iconic
which is the
Australia.
Australian fashion brand. Zalora basically.
It was, the office was much more vibrant there.
different ecosystem, different talent base. Much more traction early on, much more mature disposable income. They had way more. Starting in Australia had some perks, I guess.
True. True.
And then what did you do for the rest of Zalora then?
I built a team
in Malaysia.
In Malaysia, and they were responsible for internal IT.
Zalora Malaysia.
Yes.
Oh, so you were probably one of the only ventures in the region to have a tech team specifically in Malaysia. Because at the time, right, when I had met you, we were coordinating with the Chinese tech team every day. It was very hard.
Oh,
language barrier.
I can imagine how painful. But it was a small team handling internal IT, trying to make life easy for every department that need our help.
Okay.
Yeah.
So handling like automations. Did you also touch the code base in terms of the back end?
Initially, that was a constantly changing environment. So initially, I did.
Oh, okay.
We did. Oh. But the owner of those things change hands all the time.
Yeah.
To a point where it's not even feasible. Yeah. Also, they didn't need our help.
Yeah. So I mean, it was originally out of China. Then they closed down the tech team, and they moved it to Philippines. Philippines closed down, and they moved it to Portugal.
Yeah. Okay.
The last one was Portugal. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe the Portuguese team is still alive and well and kicking. And they did quite a good job with that, I think.
Right. And we did quite some training, I guess, for whatever they're trying to achieve, and nothing came out of it, really.
It was. I mean, so I want to talk about that, right? So, you actually got to touch the code base. How messy was it, and how and what was there anything good in it, or?
Let me see. Code base at the time was stored in Subversion, which is not Git, which made our life a bit more difficult.
Basically a tool to manage the code, right?
It's so the standard right now is we use to do version control.
Yeah.
So everybody get their source code in the version they want. At the time, Git wasn't as prevalent, so it's Subversion that they were using. So
what is a Subversion?
So it's a previous iteration of source control tool, which works vastly different from Git. So that was what we had to use, and it was difficult. A lot of people weren't used to it. So okay, well that's fine. I guess you can manage around that. So you asked how messy was the code. Let's see. What I remember was this. There was a lot of failing test codes. So rightfully, most code bases would come with automated tests.
Yes.
Yeah. Ideally, you would run it, everything would pass, and you would deploy it to production. Yeah. I remember running it as a lot of red color coming out. So they do. They do.
Okay. Wow.
So I don't know what's going on, and I mean, when you see this, then you stop trusting your test code. You stop ignoring them. Yeah. You don't know like what's legit or not.
Yeah.
So right, I'm highlighting the funny bits, not quite remembering the positive ones.
Yeah, I'm sure there was something positive.
I'm sure there was. It was there was a lot of code. One funny anecdote. There's a lot of code written by, I guess, Chinese or Singaporean coders, and we saw vulgarities in code comments. Like I don't know how that got there. So
it was the wild east back then, I guess.
Yeah.
And what I imagined was they probably took the majority of the code base from Germany, Zalando.
That's where they started it.
And then they probably copied it over, and then they probably just kept building and making a spaghetti mess out of it and scaling, right?
Yeah.
I'm surprised like Zalora was so functional after hearing that story. You know? I mean, to the degree that it was, right? I mean, it was. I mean, I don't know. What is your take in terms of Rocket as a tech culture and product culture?
It's all business first.
Yeah.
So there's no. I'd say there's just no priority for good engineering. I'd say.
Yeah.
So typical. It's what I expect that.
Yeah. So you expected that. That's good.
Well, if you survive long enough to prioritize good engineering again, well, good luck to you.
Yeah. So I mean, you're saying that is a valid strategy. Essentially, you could just make a huge mess, build a massive amount of debt. Deploy code to production that's not passing unit tests, and if you could make it work, and then someday hopefully fix it later. That's valid.
How about this? If someone think of doing this today, you're taking the exact same approach. Know the price you're paying.
Yeah. Okay.
And the price you pay would include very unhappy engineers.
Yeah. So it depends how much you value that and how you want to make that part of your culture.
Yeah. Now, so if you're okay with unhappy engineers, be prepared to pay for that.
Yeah. I'm sure there's a cost and consequence to that too.
Yeah. So on top of that, known development time. So you ask for something, you may not know when you get it. They may give you a time or multiply it by 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, this just a huge. If you willingly build up technical debt,
yeah,
it's just a huge unknown going forward, business wise.
So it's a wild card that may or may not be a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, in that kind of respect, to what degree can you game it out then?
Manage it, man. So have.
But what if it's not managed? Then you're saying it's impossible to game it out. Because you're just forcing business requirements no matter what, making engineers unhappy, scaling really fast.
Maybe as a manager, have regular talks with the engineers about this issue, and get a sense of get their sense of estimation on this.
Yeah.
So pay attention to the word they use, pay attention to their level of frustration, and manage it. Don't let it get out of hand before it's too late.
And I guess the worst case is you lose a whole engineering team and no one to manage your code base, I guess.
Yeah. At that point, might as well start from scratch.
Yeah.
Which sometimes makes sense.
Sometimes, yeah. I feel like anytime you got to that point, any new engineer coming in, I think it feels like 9 out of 10 times they're just going to say start from scratch.
Yeah. To me, that would be a personal failure. If I build something, I leave, somebody take over, they'd rather start from scratch. It's a personal failure on my part.
Yeah.
And because, it's not anti-fragile.
So your 1 year at Rocket, net positive, good or bad? How would you say?
I would frame it as positive, purely because I see business blitzkrieg. That's
the infamous phrase.
Hardly seen anywhere else. So and people I worked with was pleasant.
Okay, so the team was actually good.
Yeah. I know it's not true like across the board.
Yeah, but
at least
you
my
do
experience.
find good people there.
Yeah, my experience, I hired the right people. I was happy. I think they were happy with me. So okay, yeah.
And then why did you stay only a year then? A year plus, a year and a month or so?
Someone poached me.
Someone poached you
to do a startup. So
was this tribe hire?
Yes. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Anything significant there in getting poached?
You mean at the end of that?
Yeah. Or throughout, at the end?
Throughout.
Anything that you would worth mentioning?
My time there was very experimental. It was the whole business was very experimental.
Before we start, what is Tribe Hire?
It was today I would call it boutique headhunting agency.
For technical, right? Or
For technical, yeah.
Right? So if you want to hire technical people, engineers, software coders,
you go Tribe Hire.
It's a platform where the people could hire.
Yeah, it's. I think headhunting would be quite accurate. At the time, that wasn't the case.
Yeah.
At the time, it wasn't tech focused. It was across the board. You're trying to change the game of social hiring. It was early days of social media.
Yeah, I would imagine I'd be very cynical of this space.
Right. Yeah. So, but to be fair, at the time, it was social media was still very early. There was still optimism.
Yeah.
So so this was the attempt at taking the social graph and apply recruiting on top.
Is there anything to be had with technology with it, or does it just revert back to pure headhunting model at the end of the day, and you don't need much tech?
It evolved like that. So we try to apply tech on top of it. I think stuck. So
is this across the board for the industry, you would say, or is you guys missed something, you messed up, or
Oh, so in retrospect?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. There's nothing there, I think.
Okay, so there's no point to apply tech. I mean, there's not much.
No.
I mean, nothing too accretive where it's going to unlock massive value, become a venture, right?
Yeah.
It's just going to be a very steady. I mean, to be honest, you can make a lot of money though. A lot of cash.
True.
Doing technical recruitment.
Yeah.
And just very basic layered tech, I'm sure.
Yeah. So, I mean, what can you name today that's even remotely close? LinkedIn?
LinkedIn is
Come on.
I mean, it's a business stream. It's because they have the network effect of the other thing, the main core business they started. Right?
Yeah.
And that's an offshoot. And that's one of the rare cases where you have multiple business streams that work out in the long term. But without that network effect, which it was social, it seems that maybe Tribe Hire went in the wrong way, starting one stream locked them, and then they by necessity of force, by not making any money, you have to go back to traditional recruitment, I guess.
Yes. It eventually, evolved that way. It was trying to catch product market fit. So to be fair, across the years, a lot of experiments was done. So the fact that it didn't pan out, that's fine. We tried. So that's saying something.
And then I guess you moved on to, how did you jump from Tribe Hire to Kakitangan, which is your main current venture business now?
Evan hired me.
Did you leave and he hired you, or?
I left. Yeah. I left and then took a few months off and back to Kakitangan. Yeah.
How big is Kakitangan now?
Right now, 20 plus people, 20, 25.
And how many clients you guys are serving?
I don't keep track. Last I heard about 2,000 companies. Yeah.
Any plans for expansion? Or?
We'll try to take Malaysian market.
Get to cash flow positive and profitability first.
Yes.
Are you guys there yet, or?
We are there.
Okay.
We are there, but we're not out of the woods.
Okay. So you want to make it a very strong, stable foundation before looking to probably look abroad, and of course you'd be in a strong position to not worry about running out of money. We're stable, and then you could probably go from there, right? Yeah,
that's pretty much it. The going abroad thing, it crossed our mind over the years.
Yeah.
It's a huge distraction. We don't even want to talk about that.
Yeah. So just focus.
Yeah, do it well here first.
Yeah.
Besides, for our category, it's a lot of what we do are largely it's hard to move countries. So
labor laws?
Yes. Payroll.
It was different, yeah. Different systems, different banking systems too.
Yeah. So it involve a lot more costs. It's not a one-to-one mapping.
How about reducing some frictions? Regulatory will always be there, I think. But a transaction wise, crypto, right? If you would scale across any country if everyone's using crypto.
True. So, but that's not what we do yet.
Yeah.
So the core of what we do are quite straightforward.
Yeah.
So you would wish it's like, we could take our leaf systems and then plant it in Indonesia. It just work.
Yeah.
Not quite.
For employees asking for leave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Especially payroll, that's not even possible. So leave applications, claims may be possible.
Claims, I would imagine, would be huge if there's so much corporates in Southeast Asia that are not using big conglomerates. And I think what you get is a lot of really terrible local low quality solutions that are really janky.
Right.
I've seen it firsthand, and it's just massively painful. And when we were doing Easy Taxi, one of the biggest things that scaled in Latin America really well was a corporate Easy Taxi, which was a solution to control taxis and claims on taxis. And you would save up to 40% of your budget.
Right.
So I feel there's a huge space to be had for claims for companies in general. And I think before the pandemic, there were massively valued companies who were approaching this for travel, right? And corporates. So
Right. So yeah, I think product is one dimension, sales is another.
Yeah.
So it's definitely not a trivial thing to do. So much marketing, so much like on the ground kind of activities. So, and it's a lot more room to grow here.
Yeah. So still plenty of room. And I would argue yes, but there's more competition in the market now, right? Or has that probably gone away with the pandemic?
Competition?
Yeah.
They're coming in strong, man.
So there's more and more.
Yeah, more and more, and they're getting more aggressive.
Yeah.
Marketing and price wise.
Yeah.
So we're anxious.
What is Kakitangan's answer to that? Where do you get your edge, and then how you remain relevant and retain your users at the end of the day?
The same thing we do across the years. We had, as a response to those, we have not changed our roadmap. We have not made a rash pivot. Basically, it's the same approach. We look at the customers. What are the biggest problems to solve? What are their biggest pain point? We try to solve that in the fastest way we can.
Follow the customers.
Yeah.
And then ideally, then you just have to build the sales team to pivot with the growth to keep introducing more customers to either validate the hypothesis that was the right pain point, or maybe look for new pain points that are bigger across more customers. Right?
Yeah. So at this point, it's not even about hypothesis for us. Yeah. We just know.
You have the product market fit already.
As in what pain point to solve. It's not even a hypothesis. We just know what are the biggest pain points.
People are paying you for it already.
We legitimately know that if we solve this problem, it will lead to this much money.
How do you know?
Sales
people.
So
basically, you have historical data and what they're asking for.
Salespeople, how they lose sales, would tell you, or because you're missing this part.
Yeah. If you don't have this, the customer won't.
Yeah. So
it means the salespeople to be very close to the customers.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and they must be talking.
So sales supports are very important. You
see the pain points through support.
Yeah.
To what degree does the engineering team get involved in talking to customers then, or do you purely trust the sales? Is that good enough?
It's more than good enough to us. So we rely on support and sales to give us feedback, and then we adjust our roadmap based on those.
Has that ever been wrong? Because I would imagine if I'm a salesperson, I care about my target only.
Yeah.
I got this big fish.
I know.
He says this.
Yes.
I tell you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't apply to 99% of the customers.
True.
Right.
True.
So in what cases is this right and wrong, and how do you filter for that?
I'm sure there are examples of that.
But you trust.
There are pain. See, so here's the tricky bit is this. They tell you the pain point. Of course, they don't know the cost of solving those. We do. So my team has to do the balancing between cost and solution. So sometimes we make the wrong cost estimation. It ended up way too expensive.
Can you give me a hard example so I understand it better?
Suppose they want a feature, and the feature requires me building an engine. Let's go back to the previous example, workflow engine. So I could have took a much shorter time, a cheap way, and it'll come out in a month. But it took 2 months, 3. So would they have lost sales as a result? Maybe.
I see.
So So that's one example. Let's see, where else can I go with that? So it's true. The sales may come in with a rather selfish request.
Yeah.
That can happen.
Yeah.
But the support team are not incentivized that way.
So you check multiple
stakeholders. So they can triangulate.
Yeah.
And we kind of trust that result.
And I guess the proof would be in how much sales and growth you have then. Right. At the end of the day, right.
Of course, the end metric of sales, you can never say it's because you built this one thing, right? It's always
hard to. But you could extrapolate. You could.
Yeah. But and I think we've never tried. We never say, hey, you built that thing, that gave us X revenue. Yeah. I think that has never happened. So
why is that?
Because it's not true. How do you know it's true?
Yeah. Well, it depends how fast you ship. If you're shipping too much and not controlling for experiment stuff, then yes, right? Or if you look by usage even, right? How often you use that feature that you built for them.
It's not like we can hold everything constant. We just do that one thing, right? Yeah. So there are tons of things going on. Every day there are new things added on top. So
in what cases, how do you make very good, clear roadmap calls then to prioritize? Right, because it's everything's obscured and it's hard to control for everything. But you do need to have sometimes experiments. Some things do need to be fixed, or is it just all intuition again?
The process looks like this. We make a list of everything you want to do, and then as a team we come together and prioritize. As a team, as in the whole company.
Okay.
Every department.
So they all have to buy in.
Yeah.
So everyone's responsible for it.
Yeah. So
then you're held to it.
So then we put a priority, and then we say, okay, there's room to fit in 9 items, example. Okay, pick your top 9 items.
Based off your estimate and what you think is feasible.
Yeah.
How do you go about figuring out the time estimates then? What is your process, and then what is too long, what is too short? How do you know one is 1 day, one is 3 days, one is half a day?
Instinct, pretty much.
Instinct. Oh man, okay, that's very tough.
Right. Yes.
Which is why it's really hard for a business person to ever judge a technical person.
I know.
Too much to.
And so for a business person, you the heuristic is multiply by 3. Whatever given to you.
Yeah, that's one of the expectations. But
and for an engineer, it's an art to do estimation. There are a lot of literature out there on how to do that.
Methodologies and philosophies.
I'm still lacking on that department. I know people who are very good in it.
Yeah. To be fair, at 20 people, how many are engineers?
5, 6.
5, 6, right? And I guess at that scale, it's you could argue you don't need to be so formal. Well, it might bite you in the ass later if you do rapidly scale. You don't have that infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
So at least you're aware.
Therefore, we are still very careful about scaling engineering because I think it's a very intricate operation.
Yeah.
So I mean, a 12-person operation is not the same thing as like twice a 6-person operation.
The amount of technical and human complexity you introduce, you just may end up burying yourself because you're trying to solve issues that are not relevant to building the business at that point. Right? So it is a gamble. Sometimes at some point you may need to cross that threshold, I guess.
Yes. Yeah, and it'll be a wholly different game if I were to play that, trying to manage 20 people. Entering
the territory of technical lead and CTO more, I guess.
Yeah. So which, goes back to what we talked about, try to, whatever the size, try to find something that's interesting to work on or impactful.
Yeah. It's a good compass to at least to know if you want to stay longer or for how long, right? So I don't think we have time to talk about crypto. We're going to have to get you on for another repeat episode where we just talk purely about crypto. This is a very interesting world. We have a lot of discussions about that and what the world looks like and what it's shaping up to be. So I guess for the last question is, what advice would you give then to people who are in technical lead positions, CTO positions, or even young or experienced engineers? What advice would you give them?
Do what you like, man. I don't know how many people know this. From an engineer to a manager is not a promotion.
Unless you like the human interaction, I guess.
Yes. So if you switch to a manager track, look. This is common knowledge to my world. I guess maybe not outside of that. So if you become a tech lead ever, know that it's not the same thing. It's a people thing. So know your strength.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there also is a distinction, right? Which is why titles from our first point in the very beginning is important, right?
I like that you do that at closing loop.
Right? Because tech lead is different from engineering manager, different from CTO, different from, number and letter employees who have different ranks. Right?
Yeah.
So what do you mean by tech lead versus? Because you could mean engineering manager instead, though. Is there a difference between tech lead? Because tech lead also is technically more
hands-on,
more hands-on, but also more of the code, right?
Yeah,
code reviews and kind of things.
Yeah,
but engineering manager maybe doing more of the interactions with product and design, right?
Yes. So no. Back to my first point. They're not the same thing. It's not a promotion. It's a different track.
Yeah.
So just know that from the get-go.
If you take a title at that level.
Yeah. So but above all, try to do things you're good at, things you're interested in, not because it's an elevation in status, or it pays more.
Yeah. Which is quite well. I mean, I would argue it depends where you are in your life. I mean, some people are also motivated by prestige and things like money, right? But I guess if you're looking to solve problems and find fulfillment and growth, that often might lead to a dead end after a certain point, right?
Yeah, if you gotta whatever you pursue, even if you're after status, you still have to do what you're good at.
Yeah.
I mean, if you suck at it, how far can you take this? Granted, some people fail their way up, but but hey, it's a different game. If you want to play that game. Then play that game, not engineering.
Not real engineering, but there are a lot of very pretty big, well-funded companies in Southeast Asia where the CTO is not even technical at all. You see that often. So.
Yeah. So now that kind of game, maybe I should learn it. I don't know.
Something to think about.
It's not. It's not the same game.
But in general, your advice would be, do what you like. Make sure you're good at it, right? And kind of follow that as your compass going forward. And at least if you kind of follow that, you won't go wrong at the end of the day, or you won't feel bad.
Whatever you do, be world class at it.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Thank you for your time, YK.
Thank you, Alex. Love to be around again.
Hey, listeners. Thanks for listening to another episode of EOA. As usual, if you enjoyed the podcast, please share the love. Share it to your friends. Share it to your family if you think it will help them on their journey. Also, help write a review on your podcast platform, as it helps us a lot. So what did we learn today? Engineering, specifically software engineering, is definitely very similar to operations in my opinion. You either can solve things or you can't. And if you can solve them, there are always ways to constantly optimize the solutions. However, that being said, you always find differing opinions on what is quote-unquote the right way to do things. In the thick of it, it'll be hard to say what is right, as it depends on your goals and your objectives, and will change as you mature and develop and reflect back on your decisions. However, I do believe there are some principles that YK talks about that are harder to argue against, such as how you develop engineering talent and the associated cost to different methods. To me, it sounds like YK is following a similar vein to the golden rule of philosophy. Treat those how you want to be treated, and he has elevated his leadership over the years using this method. If you ignore that, you can still reach your goals, but at a cost of maybe losing your team or respect. And again, there's no right or wrong here, but consequences for you to consider. There's plenty of other practical advice in there, so go ahead and take another listen. I promise you will learn something new the second time around, or reinforce some key concepts. As usual, I hope you learned something, and see you back here for next week's episode. EOA out.